Hi and welcome back to another episode of Fish Scales. Thank you so much for those who decided to follow the channel. I really appreciate your support, and I've had some excellent feedback and recommendations which I'll be following up on. Today I'd like to share with you, first of all, the success that I had with the green route that's been my project for a couple of weeks. I'm thrilled to say that with your beta and a bit more practice, I was able to get it done this week, and I'm going to show you a couple of video clips of me climbing it. And then I'd like to share a DIY project that I've been working on this morning to be able to come up with a tool that I'll be using to increase my finger strength. So stick around, hopefully there'll be something useful for you. This is some footage of the first time I succeeded in completing the route, and I did take much of the beta that had been offered to me in the comments online, so my heel is hooking further up on this hold, and I'm going to be able to make use of the underhanging hold just beneath the two boomerang shapes, which was something that was advised. But I think the key here was that I kept my legs lower. I didn't go up to the drop knee that I was working on last week, but instead kept my foot lower, created that triangle position for a more stable base, and that seemed to allow me to complete the route. And as you can see, I'm somewhat bewildered and very happy to have done it. So here I am a few days later, and I've returned to the route just to see if I can become a little bit more efficient in the climb and be more confident in my foot placement again. And I think that I'm more fluid now in these movements. I still do break away from the wall. I couldn't hold my foot, and I think that's okay. I think sometimes to have feet dynamically breaking away, as long as you've got the conditioning to be able to continue towards the top. Little drop the knee there helped, and I had plenty of energy and arm strength left to complete the route. So thank you one and all for your support, and I'm now looking for my next project. In an effort to start to build up my finger strength, I picked up one of these crimp blocks from Lattice Training and an Olympic lifting pin. And then I'm basically holding a half crimp. At the moment, I'm having quite a light weight on here of around about 20 kilograms. And then I'm holding half crimp and doing repeaters. So I'm lifting from the legs, lifting up, making sure to keep my shoulder down, counting for about 4 to 6 seconds, placing it back down again. So working on good form, making sure that the weights are central and that my grip isn't deteriorating. And I'm tending to do 8 lifts on each hand, then have a 2-minute break, and I'm doing 3 or 4 sets of these. And then when I finish doing that, I'm going from my half crimp to, I think they call this a 3-finger sloth. So it's when the fingers are more extended outwards, and I'm lifting from here instead. I'm not working on full crimp at the moment because I'm told that that requires a little bit more development in the finger muscles and the tendons so that you don't injure yourself. So it's alternating between these two basic kind of holds. One of the things I've really noticed is that my left side is much weaker, my grip strength's much weaker. On this left side, I am right hand dominant, but I also sustained a shoulder injury several years ago, and the whole of the kind of rotor cuff area up there is a bit jacked up, and I need to do lots of mobility in order to keep the wheels on my body at this time. So I'm being quite careful on this side to make sure that I don't sustain any significant injury. And I have a new project underway today, which I'm really excited to share with you. And it's based upon something I've been saving up for a while, the Tindeq Progressor, which is a dynomometer. Now, the idea of a dynomometer is that it should be able to precisely measure the amount of force that I'm placing on my fingertips. And so I'll be able to measure over time my progress. In order to do that, you need a ground anchor, a fixed anchor. So let me show you the materials that I've gathered together for my DIY project for the day. So there's nothing very complicated here, just a few bits and pieces, most of which I'm sure you'll have lying around at home, but I picked up from a hardware store this U-bolt. And I also got some 10mm washers, although I didn't end up needing to use them for this project. A piece of plywood which will form the platform, and some wooden struts which will raise the platform from the ground, and then some drill bits, a screwdriver, some screws, tape measure, a pencil, and a platform that you can use for the cutting. And that's everything you'll need for this project. And this is the finished product after about 45 minutes of working. I'm not particularly DIY inclined, but this was a fairly straightforward project. So I've placed, as you can see, 4 risers equally spaced apart to distribute my weight, and also to make a little bit more space for the U-bolt, which comes through the center here. I've raised the U-bolt up just because the prongs were really long and it didn't fit particularly, or it ended up going further through than the space that I had with these blocks alone. So this raises that central U-bolt up a bit. And then that's the standing platform. So this goes onto the ground. And then, as I'm going to show you, it's very simply a case of carabinering a daisy chain strap, and then you can do isometric lifts from here. So here you can see I've set up the rig. So we have a carabiner with the daisy chain attached to a second carabiner here. And then I've got a 22mm edge, and I can stand on my platform and then pull, and I'm engaging isometric strength here, so it's not going to go anywhere. And I can either pull to failure or just hold for time. And that is then going to work endurance and a different kind of strength than if I'm just lifting plates. But the exciting thing is that with a little bit of conversion, I can then bring the dynomometer into play and actually start getting some metrics. So this is the Tindeq Progressor 200. It cost me £165. I got this one from Lattice Training, who are excellent. I've got a few bits and pieces from them now, and they come highly recommended if you're in the UK. I'll put a link in the description so that you can go and take a look at it. I'm not, of course, affiliated in any way. And the idea is that you press this button here and then Bluetooth connect it to an app on your phone. And then you carabiner it either side into the system. And then there are all kinds of different ways in which you can get data. I'm only just starting to learn how to use it now, but I'll do another episode where I talk you through the Tindeq in more detail and how I'm using it. But I'll just rig it into the system so you can see how it works. So we have the ground anchor here, which I've linked the daisy chain to, and then I'm just going to carabiner either side, adjusting the length based upon your arm length and body length. And then here I can actually feel that I'm pulling against the system. And let's get the app going and we'll see what we can do with this. In order to establish a baseline for my finger strength, I'm going to use the Tindeq Progressor now for something that's called a peak load test. So the idea is that it's going to compare my left and right side and get a sense of what my maximum loading is with good form. I'm going to use a half crimp on each arm, and then I'll use that as a starting point for my progression as I hopefully get stronger finger strength. So on the app, I'm just going to click the peak load, select a new session, and then there's a left and right side option or a single mode option. So I'm going to go left and right side. I'm going to hit start the session. I just need to wake up the device. So it's connecting via Bluetooth. I'm doing something called to tar it, which I think basically means to make sure that it's zeroed out before you begin. And here we are. So I'm going to work the left side first. I'm going to take up the slack, but move to my left hand. And then I'm going to exert as much force as I can until the form starts to slip. And then I'm going to stop. So here we go. So that's registering at 34.3 kilograms, which is quite weak, I know, but this is the injured side of my body. And then I'm going to switch to the right hand side and I'm going to repeat the same thing. So that's 40.7 kilograms. And then I'm just going to make a note. So baseline test. And what's interesting is, I'll bring this closer to the camera so that you can see it. It gives an indication of how imbalanced I currently am. So it's identifying, that maximum on my left-hand side is 34.34 and on my right-hand side 40.67. So the ratio is this in terms of the strength that I have at the moment. So I've got a 54.2% strength on the right side in comparison to the left. So as I rehab and get fitter and stronger, I'm hoping that will balance out. And I'm also hoping that my overall strength, so the amount of peak load that I can take through each hand, will be much higher than that. I'm going to do some research. I don't yet know what would be typical of a strong climber, but what I do know is that your finger strength and your ability to endure load through the fingers will dictate to some degree the difficulty of the climbs that you're able to handle. So I could have excellent balance and great coordination and read the route well, but if it's a crimpy route and my fingers can't hold out, I'm not going to make the climb. So this is going to be a really important part of my training arsenal, and it's great now to have a means by which I can actually measure in real terms how I'm doing and how I can improve. So that wraps it up for today. Thanks again for your time and your attention. Really appreciate it. Do leave comments for me if you've got any recommendations or suggestions about how to use the Tindeq Progressor or finger strength conditioning in general. I'm going to be away for a few days now. I'm visiting my family and then I'm taking 7 days in the Welsh mountains, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm hoping to climb Trefan with my family for the first time. I've been up there a few times. I'd like to take them up the North Face if the weather conditions are good and do some scrambling. And I think there are some really excellent indoor climbing centres there. So I'll take the camera and perhaps I can do some filming in a different location for you. So until then, thanks very much.